Session 8. Session 8. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the last and the final prophet. The Man for the Mankind by ex-Brigadier Mustansir Billah. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin with the name of Allah, who is most gracious and tremendously merciful. Nahmadu nusalli ala Rasulihil Kareem, and blessings on Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the last and the final prophet. Rabbi Shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. O my Rabb, open my heart and ease my task. Brothers and sisters, we continue with Muhammad and human rights. Muhammad, peace be upon him, and human rights. Anas Razila Ta'ala Anhu reported that when the Prophet, peace be upon him, first recited the Quranic revelation, that is 3 Surah Al-Imran verse 92, definitely you will not be able to achieve excellence in piety unless you do not give most cherished, loved things in the way of Allah. And whatever you spend, Allah knows well the quality, the quantity, and the actual inner motive of spending, giving. This was Surah Al-Imran, 3rd Surah, verse 92. Now the explanation. Abu Talha Razilullah Ta'ala Anhu came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and stated this verse has been revealed to you, and of all my property, I like this garden the most. They were both sitting in this garden. And of all my property, I like this garden the most. So I give it away in the way of Allah to gain the pleasure of Allah alone. I hope being rewarded for it. So please take it as having been given to you by Allah and use it the way you like. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, very good. This is a very profitable transaction. I have heard whatever you have said, but the Prophet, peace be upon him, rather than accepting it, said that you distribute it among your close relatives. Abu Talha replied, all right, O Prophet, peace be upon you of Allah, this is how I'll do. So he distributed it among his relatives and cousins. Bukhari, Muslim. So the genuine lovers of Muhammad, peace be upon him, live to give, not to take. They fulfill their obligations and shoulder all responsibilities voluntarily for the pleasure of Allah alone. The so-called human rights are a little more than a hoax with them. None can make the developed countries and the powerful people to follow them. It is a tool to befool the poor and the weak. As long as zulm, that is injustice, evil, is not eliminated, suppressed, contained by the use of force, mankind will not even agree on what exactly are human rights. The problem, where do the human rights originate from? Where do the human rights originate from? The father of the American Revolution traced back to God the truths or rights which they regarded as self-evident. The French Jacobins, however, understood human rights only in terms of natural rights as those that are agreed upon. So, an axe of dispute was laid against the future edifice of human rights. For it can only be accepted by the Muslims if fundamental rights are understood in agreement with the Islamic view as rights laid down by Allah, not created by man, but simply discovered or recognized by him as already and eternally existing. At the end of the day, respect for human rights stands or falls with the belief in God. At the end of the day, respect for human rights stands or falls with the belief in God. Those who deny him involuntarily place all rights at the mercy of human disposition, even if they deceive themselves by referring to putative, that is, natural rights. No one has ever been able to derive a concrete and generally convincing legal system for the contemplation of nature. No one has been able to derive a concrete and generally convincing legal system from the contemplation of nature. In fact, those who try only project their own ideological ideas onto nature. In these cases, the real validity of the law is actually founded not in nature but in convention, in a social consensus, that is, social contract. Signing of human rights pacts and declarations led to better legal protection of individuals in the communist world, which is no longer relevant. As regards the human rights conceived as demands on the states, the accent has been on what the state should not do. Also, the state should guarantee employment, housing, health care, etc. At any rate, human rights are discredited when, for example, we hear of a fundamental right to feel afraid, for example, of nuclear war, or to drug oneself, fundamental right to drug oneself. Even more absurd human rights will probably follow. The conduct and teachings of Muhammad, peace be upon him, and system of caliphate, established and run by Khulafa'i Rashidin, the rightly guided caliphs of Islam, leave no scope for the entry of such fad and folly of another confrontation among the mankind. The Constitution of Medina and the system of the Caliphate, as per Quran and Sunnah, adhered not only to the earliest but the most comprehensive classical human rights in the world. The Caliphate system of governance gives a freedom not known to the modern West. The individual can disobey the state. The foremost constitutional right of every Muslim is there is no obedience in disobedience of Allah, that is Quran and Sunnah. I repeat, the foremost constitutional right of every Muslim is there is no obedience in disobedience of Allah, that is Quran and Sunnah. It means the Muslims are not supposed to obey any orders from any corner authority, even the Caliph, which requires disobedience of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Quran. I repeat, it means Muslims are not supposed to obey any orders from any corner authority, even the Caliph, which requires disobedience of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Quran. The highest human good, the elimination, containment, suppression of zulm, injustice, exploitation, and all types of evils in the societies globally necessitated the establishment of the caliphate by the Prophet, peace be upon him. The following fundamental rights are guaranteed on the basis of Quran and Sunnah. These are life, corporate vulnerability, liberty, equal treatment, non-discrimination, right of property, freedom of conscience, marriage, legal hearing, the assumption of innocence, that is, no punishment without prior threat of punishment, protection from torture and asylum, These have been legally guaranteed for 1400 years now. The Prophet, peace be upon him, gave detailed regulations for the self-education and religious freedom of minorities, which, as initiated, established, practiced by Muhammad, peace be upon him, were followed through a historical evidence of the profound tolerance of Islam, and followed through a historical evidence of the profound tolerance of Islam. Certain fundamental differences of perception between the Western Human Rights Codex and Muhammad's peace be upon him teachings are: 1. The certain fundamental differences of perception, I repeat, between the Western Human Rights Codex and Muhammad, peace be upon him teaching are: 1. The Human Rights Conventions 1950 contain formulations on the equality of men and women can hardly be rectified by the Muslims. It is evident from the conduct of Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Quran incarnate, the walking, living Quran, he didn't discriminate against women when comparing them to men. He didn't discriminate against women when comparing them with men. He differentiated between women when he differentiated between men and women in their obligations, roles, tasks, responsibilities through hijab, segregation, norms of modesty and chastity. In other words, that which was the same treated the same, and that which was different was treated differently as such. This obviously is a more logical, rational, and accurate approach. The problem about the West, as per the Muslims, is that its policies, norms, and social values are those that are demanded or agreed upon by the people under the influence of the media. A Muslim's blood would boil if someone pitches secular public opinion against the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It is taken as a tremendous bloomer, a serious mistake which peeves a Muslim. Many Muslims falter, do not observe parda, hijab, and may not adhere to segregation, but they can't ever dare to doubt or question the Prophet, peace be upon him, or the word of Allah. Many Muslims, I repeat, falter, do not observe parda, hijab, and may not adhere to segregation, but they can't ever dare to doubt or question the Prophet, peace be upon him, or the word of Allah. As such, the reality, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. As such, the reality, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. There can't be a compromise on this issue. Muslims differentiate the rights and roles of men and women. The West is least convinced. Muslims differentiate the rights and roles of men and women. The West is least convinced. As per the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the husband is responsible for the following, for these. 1. Providing a home shelter to his wife. Providing a home shelter to his wife. To be ensuring that she has the same standard of food and clothes as his own. Ensuring that she has the same standard of food and clothes as his own. 3. C. Pays all the bills. And 4. Finances the feeding, upbringing, clothes, and education of the children. Finances the feeding, upbringing, clothes, and education of the children. If the husband permits willingly, the wife can have a job where there is a segregation of the genders and she wears hijab, is properly covered, and is accompanied by a reliable family member or a female friend. But he cannot force, demand, or pester her to pay or share the bills or other expenditures, including those on the children. But he cannot force, demand, or pester her to pay or share the bills or other expenditures, including those on the children. If she does so voluntarily, it is counted as a nafli ibadat, supernumerary reward. If she does so voluntarily, it is counted as nafli ibadah, supernumerary reward. A stay-at-home wife is, however, preferred. A stay-at-home wife is, however, preferred. It is desired that a wife listens to the husband, keeps this one man happy, compared to a dozen or so that she has to please, masters, bosses, colleagues, etc., that is, all sorts of rogues. I repeat, it is desired that a wife listens to the husband, keeps this one man happy, compared to a dozen or so that she has to please, masters, bosses, colleagues, etc., that is, all sorts of rogues. When both go out and work spend time with attractive people at work, or meet or travel with attractive opposite sex, the marriages obviously come under stress. Compromises between husband and wives lose value, become relegated solutions when both or any one of the spouse have shadow wives or shadow husbands ready and sometimes very eager to step in any moment. I repeat, when both go out and work spend time with attractive people at work, or meet or travel with attractive opposite sex, the marriages obviously come under stress. Compromises between husband and wives lose value, become relegated solutions when both or any one of the spouse have shadow wives or shadow husbands ready and sometimes very eager to step in any moment. This and for many other reasons, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his companions were not soft on the necessity of hijab and keeping the males and females at a distance. I repeat, this and for many other reasons, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his companions were not soft on the necessity of hijab and keeping the males and females at a distance. 2. Since judicial mistakes, miscarriage of justice cannot be corrected in case of capital punishment, many countries would like to see the death penalty abolished worldwide. I repeat, since judicial mistakes, miscarriage of justice cannot be corrected in cases of capital punishment, many countries would like to see the death penalty abolished worldwide. But the Muslims cannot join them. Because A. The laws of evidence of Sharia are a way different, more accurate, more demanding, foolproof, and less manipulative. The laws of evidence of Sharia, I repeat, are a way different, more accurate, more demanding, foolproof, and less manipulative. There is an obligation to give due weight to the circumstances of the crime. B. The Qazi's jurists, apart from being well-versed, are God-fearing too. And morally and religiously elevated. C. Quran and Sunnah prescribe death penalty for 5 offenses in the ordinary way. Quran and Sunnah prescribe death penalty for 5 offenses in the ordinary way. 1. High treason, that is renegation, leaving the religion. 2. Murder. 3. Robbery, dacoity. 4. Adultery. And 5. And the most important, the blasphemy of the Prophet, peace be upon him. D. Abolition of death penalty negates the very purpose of the advent of Muhammad, peace be upon him, that is, eradication of zulm, injustice, exploitation, evil, and all types of crimes. There is life, that is security of life, prevention of bloodletting, social harmony in qisas, so that you save yourselves. Is the verse, the Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 79, translation of the verse. There is life, that is within brackets security of life, prevention of bloodletting, social harmony in qisas, that is blood, so that you save yourselves, that is blood for